Well, hey, welcome to our new show. My name is Scott.
And I'm Marshall.
And we have our show called United Opposition. Welcome to United Opposition on 511 Media. We are so excited to be here with you. We are Marshall. Tell us a little about our history.
Oh my gosh! Well, first there were the dinosaurs.
No. History of you and I.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said history.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
Scott, you and I know each other from school. We were in high school together. We were buds in high school.
You say how long ago?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Pretty close to the dinosaurs. So yeah. I think telling me to leave the dinosaurs out of it is really just splitting hairs, Scott. But I get it.
I wrote a philosophy to school, so
I tell my son the same thing.
Yeah.
So we were friends in high school, and we did a lot of stuff with the visual arts. You used to run around with the video camera, and we would make little videos and films and stuff all the time. And in college, we did some really cool photos, and I don't have those handy.
At some point. Yeah, we'll have to show those at some point.
Yeah, we'll have to bust those out. I know I've got them saved somewhere. And, we both took different tacks in life, if you will. We were both good, faithful Christians as young men.
Yep.
And then I kind of went off the reservation. I went off the path and went my own direction. It really happened when I saw the tsunami in Japan, of all things. That was kind of like the triggering event that derailed my faith, but it was a long time in coming. I think around the age of 25, I started having kidney stones and other health problems. And I had a real hard time with that. And I saw this tremendous disaster unfolding live on TV. And I'm like, there can't be a God, And so I delved into the realm of atheism.
Now, during that time, I became a youth pastor.
Right.
And worked for 20 some odd years at a church.
Right. And, it was a really dark time in my life. It was a dark time. And I had to process and get through it however a person has to get through it. I know that you prayed for me. We maintained our friendship. We stayed in touch. We actually launched a podcast, like 10 years ago now? I don't know. It's been a minute. It's been a while.
Years ago. Yeah. We launched a podcast where I was a pastor and you were an atheist. And an atheist on a podcast talking about, complete opposites, being a pastor, being an atheist, being a person on the right, being a person on the left. I'm a conservative as far as American politics are. I'm a conservative. You're more of a liberal or a leftist and dare I say communist.
Well,
communists. Like we were on opposite sides of just about. I mean, I was Star Wars. You were Star Trek. Like we were on like opposite sides. On just about everything. But we were able to come together and talk. And it was the biggest thing to me and to you to be able to. We would sit down at a coffee shop. That's what it was. We were meeting at a coffee shop talking, and we were like, we should just get on a podcast and do this because people need to hear this, because the whole idea is that even people who are on complete opposite sides of the spectrum on whatever it is, when we sit down together and talk, we're able to find more about where we're united than where we are in opposition.
Right.
And we discovered that because it's so easy to be a keyboard warrior and sit behind your screen and just like type all this stuff on that person who's, that other person's an idiot. That other person's evil. That other person just wants to kill babies. That other person just wants to take your freedoms. That other person is just whatever that other person you define is, until you actually sit down. Like, I couldn't say that about you. You were my friend for 30 years. You couldn't say that about me. You knew me. We both knew each other. And we discovered that, even though we're on opposite sides of all these things, there's still a way to come together and have these discussions and about deep, political, philosophical, whatever, right?
Yeah. We actually had meaningful, deep discussions. But we would have these episodes, I remember, where we would go at each other on social media.
Oh, yeah.
And neither one of us could just leave it alone, right? And we would get really kind of close with each other. Yeah, but then we would meet each other, and it was just a completely different human dynamic. It was brotherly love, if you will. And we could disagree over a cup of coffee, which, by the way, I got my coffee. Do you have your coffee?
I have my coffee. Covenant Coffee is a sponsor of 511 Media, and that's so great because when you buy coffee from them, this is sponsored here. But what they do is not just coffee; it's also a ministry. It's also a ministry what they do where they bring in emancipated foster youth who have been kind of aged out of the foster program and still need some direction. They hire them, they bring them on, and they support them. And so when you drink and you get Covenant Coffee, you're really not just getting a really good coffee, you're also supporting a ministry. And so, yeah, that was a great segue, Marshall. I appreciate that. Now it's time for our ASMR coffee sip.
I already had mine. I was just interested in the coffee. That's just me. You know?
We would sit down for coffee, and that's what we're gonna keep doing. We're gonna keep doing that right here. We're gonna sit down and cup of coffee and talk about those things and the way that we are more united than we are in opposition, even though we can't be in polar opposites. Now, for those, I have to put out this caveat because I'm like, united opposition. That's a really, I thought of this name. Like it's like, counter opposite. It's really cool. I go, is there any history behind this? And it turns out there was a sect of the Soviet Communist Party called United Opposition in like the 19 teens or something like that. But we're not affiliated with that. Well, I'm not, Marshall. I don't know if you're going to be, but I'm not affiliated with that United Opposition. This is about us coming together and talking about the things that we might be at different ends about. Like we were talking before we came on here about, the voting system. And, I was asking you, do you think it's possible that there will ever be a time where we can trust electronic voting? And you had an interesting answer to that.
Da, comrade. It is attributed to Uncle Joe, you may know him as Comrade Stalin, that the people who vote don't matter. It's the people who count the votes. Now, I don't know if that's actually true or not in terms of who said it, but that's kind of my opinion. I don't know. I have faith in our electoral process in general. I think that it works reasonably well, and we generally get what we vote for. I don't think that that's the problem. I don't think it's the machines or the paper ballots or whatever. I would not lay money down on the table to say that the votes are perfectly counted, accurately counted. I'm sure that there's a little bit of fudging that happens. I'm sure there's a little bit of inaccuracies. We don't know what really happens in the machines. We just don't know, and we will never know. It's like the game of telephone, where one person calls the other and a rumor gets passed down the line. Well, it's the same thing with the votes, right? The votes get counted, and every step of the way, there's the possibility of some error to be introduced. Even if it's a typo or a misspoken word, there could be malice at some point here or there. We really have no way of knowing. We just kind of have faith in the system. But I don't think that's the issue.
Do you think technology lends itself to make it better or worse, or do you think it's completely indifferent?
Again, we're not programmers, so we can't look at the code and see for ourselves and whatever runs in that machine. We're not going to know. You're either going to have faith that the system works, that the people are ethical, that they're doing their jobs, that there are people and mechanisms in place to oversee the system, and that they are also ethical in doing their jobs, that the methodology is correct, and that one person equals one vote equals one at the end of the night. And you have faith in that or you don't. There's a lot of opportunity for that to get messed up.
What can we do as a country to increase that faith?
Well, I do think, transparency is key. But at the end of the day, it's the people who count the votes that matter. So whether we vote on a machine or on a computer or on a paper ballot, I don't think that's the issue. It's people. It's kind of like the gun debate, right? Yeah. Guns don't kill people. People do. I don't kill with my pistol. I kill with my heart, kind of a thing. And it's the same thing. If the people who are counting the ballots have the wrong heart for the job, then you're not going to necessarily get what you're voting for. Or if you do, it's a coincidence,
And this is an area where you and I don't know if we still stand in opposition on this. This is an area where you and I parted ways in how to fix that. Like as a pastor, I feel that the way we fix that is we fix the individual. And there was a time, and I don't know if this is still your position, but there was a time when you were taking the place that we should trust in laws and set up laws and rules and oversight over people to guide from the outside. And I was saying that the only way we're going to get change is to guide from the inside. Where do we stand on that still?
Well, I think I would agree with you that fundamentally we need a compassionate, loving society where we ingrain things like empathy and honesty and other values into people in order to build a better society. Can
that be legislated?
We can try, but there's only so much we can do. There's only so much we can do. Yes, we can legislate giving, for example, right, through taxation. We can tell people at the top,
is taxing giving?
Is what? No, it's not giving. No, you're not going to convert anyone's hearts by taxing them. But it's the same thing. It's like a contract, right? When two people go into business with each other, but they don't really know each other, they don't have trust. But there is a contract, and the contract is a substitute for trust. So in the ideal world, we have human charity, love, and compassion and empathy, right? We have generosity in the ideal world, but we don't live in that ideal world. We live in a world where there's so many millions of people that people don't know each other, even 2 or 3 houses down the street. Yeah. So we're all strangers. So we need substitutes for trust. We don't live in a tribe of just 50 or 60 individuals anymore. We live in civilizations of hundreds of millions, even billions of human beings, like in China or India. Yeah. And so you have to have substitutes for trust. And in that case, you have the law. And is it the ideal solution? No, but it can be effective. The problem, of course, is the people who make and pass and enforce the law. Well, if they're corrupted, guess what you get?
Yeah, you get corruption. So ultimately, maybe we agree that the best solution is to change people from the inside.
I would agree with you all day there. I don't think that's wrong, but I would say something that I probably said back then that might be a little naive. I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we get everybody to be empathetic. I think we can move the needle a little bit, like a tug of war kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel if you change the people from the inside, that is a solution. Like you can say that it'd be unrealistic, but it's I believe we can know that when people change from the inside and become better people, they're going to make better decisions. It's going to affect society better. Is there a better way than starting from the inside?
No, I don't think there's a better way, but there may be a more practical way. See what I'm saying? So what you're talking about is this ideal way to do it. And if you could wave a magic wand and make that happen, that would be amazing. That would be the best possible world to live in my opinion. But we don't live in that world, and we're never going to get all these people to agree. We're never going to get millions of people to say, I'm going to open up my heart and mind to the gospel, or to Allah, or to a particular philosophy, or to just be a decent human being. There's no way to get people all to be on the same page at the same time together. It's herding cats, right? Mm-hmm. And as a consequence, we have to have a substitute, and that substitute involves coercion, which is horrible. But when you live in a corrupted world like we do, what alternative do we have?
So how much coercion should we allow in our lives?
I think that's going to vary according to circumstances, right? If there's a national emergency, there's a thing called martial law. That's heavy. That's a lot of coercion. What's that?
When they put you in charge?
Well, martial law, absolutely, right? Take a look at the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. Following the earthquake, they imposed martial law. They hanged people for starting campfires to keep warm and cook their food. They hanged them. But the reason why they had to do that was to get people to not do that, because if people did, guess what's going to kill everybody? It wasn't the earthquake. It was the firestorm in the aftermath of the earthquake that proved to be so deadly. So there is a time and a place for those kinds of policies. Personally, I still think hanging those people is horrible. But that's what they felt was necessary. There's a time and a place for that kind of rule. On the other hand, if we could just get people to agree and play along and cooperate, I think that would be absolutely outstanding. The less coercion,
so
the
what is that?
better.
I can see a burning city and people literally in a burning city and it's actually on fire. And, compare that to COVID. Compare that to, I know that you and I were on fairly opposite sides of that. And like you were, being told that we had to separate all this kind of stuff for really what wasn't a whole lot of evidence that it was it wasn't like a city on fire. It wasn't the plague that they were claiming it was going to be. And yet they were taking this martial law control effectively. Maybe not as harsh as hanging people for, lighting a fire. I understand that. But as a society, how do we determine, when do we say, hey, this is the line, we're not going to cross this line. You're not going to take that much control away from us. How much power should society have over government saying this is martial law, saying, no, this is not?
Well, if we use the example of COVID, in my opinion here, I think you got to look at the data and you have to perform a risk benefit analysis and decide then. It's kind of like game theory, right? You take a risk. Yeah. And early on in the COVID days, China was not being particularly transparent. Yeah. And so we had very limited data. We knew it was a big deal. We knew it was serious. It was certainly killing more people than most other illnesses that were out there floating around. I don't know how it compared to the flu, but I believe it was more lethal than the flu. Flu killed about 450,000.
But what is it everything down?
What's that?
But was it worth shutting everything down?
That's the question. And each society has to answer that for itself. In a society such as ours, where there's no safety net for people, we have no way of providing for people, shutting everything down and telling people that you can't operate your business and you can't go get groceries and you can't do this or that. Yikes. What are people supposed to do? Yeah. Ultimately, they came up with this idea of essential workers versus non-essential workers and essential businesses and non-essential.
It was a crap show.
Right. And I think in hindsight, I think we can all agree that measures were a little too harsh and a little too draconian. But we have to remember, when you are in that position and you have to make a decision now, because every hour that passes, the situation could potentially, realistically, become more dire and lead to more fatalities, literally. Yeah, you're going to err on that side of being harder and harsh and draconian. And in fact, you're going to wonder at night, was I harsh enough? I get that.
I had this conversation on Facebook with you, and I can't remember the person who was going back and forth, because we were talking a little bit about that, because I made a comment about, if you want to just, surrender a little bit of your liberty for some safety and security, then go ahead and do that. Because there's that, what's the famous line? You probably know this better than I do. That famous line, is it Benjamin Franklin?
It's Franklin. Yeah. Those who would sacrifice a little liberty to gain safety will deserve neither and will have neither, something to that effect. Yeah.
And I kind of alluded to that, and the person responded like saying, well, you live in a delusional world, thinking that you can never, that you can't just say we should never give up our security, our liberty for security and safety. We should never do that. I understand you can't take that position. You can't take that role. But when I responded to him in that, I equated it to that the liberty is a currency. That right? Liberty is a currency. We don't have unlimited supply. There's only a certain amount of supply, and once that liberty is all gone, we are completely oppressed and we are completely controlled. And I was making the argument that I understand you can't ever just say, no, I'm not going to pay anything. I'm not going to, because obviously we have to give up some liberty. I have to yield to that red light, even though I want to go 70 across that intersection. I have to yield to that red light, and I understand that. But I was trying to say is, every bit of liberty that's trying to be taken from us, we should fight it. We should fight it as though it's a currency that we'll never get back. That even though, yes, we do have to spend some, you can't live blindly in that idealism of you'd never give any up, because then you'll lose it all. And it's like, you can't live blindly in that. But the job of the government, the job of any government, is to maintain the rule of law, is to maintain control, and any government entity is going to take as much liberty from its people as it can in order to maintain as much control and order as it can. And if you keep allowing it to be given, if you keep giving liberty to the government entity and keep allowing that to just be, let's just throw it out there like we got a bunch of it, it will just keep taking it. Any government entity will just keep taking it so that it can maintain order. And so I find myself always on the side of, I will always react in the direction of, no, I am not going to give up this liberty until you really show me that it's absolutely necessary. And then I'm going to bargain. I'm going to, you ever watch that, what is it? Pawn Stars, how they bargain across it's like, okay, well, the best I can do for you is this. We want to take all this from you. Well, the best I can give you is this. And then it goes back and forth. And I understand that it's just, if we don't resist as much as possible of giving up our liberties, we are just recklessly careless with that liberty. We're just the people walking in and just say, hey, look what I got. Yeah, take it. Until it's like, oh wait, it's all gone. And then we can't, so I'm always going to lean on the side of, I am going to resist giving up liberty as much as possible. I'm going to be a penny pincher, and you're going to have to pry that penny of liberty away from my hand for whatever safety and security you're promising.
So the only thing I can think of right here is that you're that guy who goes 70 through the yellow light, forcing me to stop at the red when we both could have made it. If you had just gone to like 75 or 80.
Yeah,
you're that guy, huh?
I'm that guy
who screeches to the stop, huh? But it's still yellow. Come on. Let's.
You come to a stop at yellow, or do you accelerate at a yellow?
I stop. I usually stop. It depends on how long it's been yellow. But
I tell you what, and this is actually a very interesting thing. I will too, unless it is a red light camera, and that changes what I do. It really does.
Then you slam the brake.
I slam on the brake, so I know that I'm going to get slapped.
Yeah, and those cameras actually cause more accidents.
You can never tell if it's.
Yeah. Well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yeah.
But let's stay on this current thing. See, this is where I come up with wisdom. And to me, the definition of wisdom, and I don't know that it's a definition, but the way I kind of understand wisdom is it's a flexible approach. It's never this, here is the rule, this is black, this is white, and that's it. There's a certain amount of flexibility. There are certain times when you have to be hard. There are certain times when you be soft. And wisdom is knowing when to choose which, where to be. Think of a lever, right? And you have a fulcrum, and you have to move that fulcrum, and the purpose is to be effective. Mm-hmm. You don't want to move the lever too far because the fulcrum, the lever will snap. But you don't want to move it too little because then you won't be effective. So you have to dial it in just right. And that's why wisdom is important. And the only way to make a wise decision in the context of, let's say, something like COVID, is to constantly look at the data that's coming in and then move that fulcrum as the data comes in. If the data comes in and says that, these particular policies are not having an impact, then we move the fulcrum towards more liberty. If the data comes in that this is more serious than we thought, or we're suffering more because we are not being strict about it, then we move the fulcrum the other way. But you can't take this. Go ahead.
What if you don't trust the data? What if you don't trust the people giving you the data? What if the people who are giving you the data are the same people who have not given you accurate data in the past? How do you trust that?
Then you're lost. Because you don't have a compass by which to navigate.
See, do you think though that there is something beyond just data and just your head? Do you? I believe that there is I believe there's as a pastor, as a Christian, I believe there is promptings of the Holy Spirit and things like hey, hold on, even though this information is coming in but also isn't there just a gut feeling? I mean, are there times where it's like, I trust my gut more than I trust the data? Do you think that's dangerous, or do you think there are times when you just got to trust your gut?
It depends. Again, this is where wisdom comes in, right? There's a time and a place to trust your gut, and there's a time and a place to trust the data. If I'm making COVID policy for an entire state or an entire nation, I need to be able to trust the data rather than my gut. If I don't trust the data, then I don't have a compass. And if I don't have a compass, I cannot navigate to get anywhere. A captain who does not know to which port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. There's nothing you can do. On the other hand, if it's something like, should I get involved in a relationship? Or what advice should I give to my child who's in a relationship? Or should I have a certain dealing with someone or whatever it may be? Those are much more subjective. And that's where you're going to trust your gut. You might say, I just get a weird feeling about this person. I don't know if I want to do business with them.
But also as a principled person, as we were talking about earlier, because I'm a real principled person. I believe, even to my own detriment, I believe I will follow. And I think I've experienced this and have done this in a lot of cases where I will follow my principles, even if it leads to my own detriment. And I think there's times when the principle of liberty, I think, should take precedence over the data. That there's times like your data tells me to violate my liberty. I should fight that as much as possible. I think it's reasonable to fight the source of the data if it's violating your liberty.
Let me see if I can pull this up. I just finished a really cool audiobook, Nuclear War by Ann Jacobson. And it's Nuclear War, a Scenario. And it's probably the most terrifying thing that I've listened to. I would say read.
I grew up with the Gen Z and millennials don't know what it's like to grow up being at school, being told how to duck and cover under your chair for a nuclear blast.
Right.
Like, I'm looking at my son nodding right now. I don't think he ever had to even consider that, living through that like Gen X and boomers
like
had.
That was the day after. Remember that movie?
Yeah. I remember like the 80s. Like it was like any day they could just nuke us. Like living that. I remember that. Sorry. Anyway, you were saying nuclear.
So in this story, one of the fundamental issues is that you have policymakers who are drawn into basically a nuclear war scenario.
Yeah.
And even though the data has consistently told them, if you do this, this will be the consequence, and it's the worst thing imaginable, these people are going with their gut. They're riding this wave of emotion. They're not stopping to look at the data. They're not being informed by the data. They're actually following a script that has been laid down by their predecessors, and they're caught up in the moment. They go with their gut, and of course, the entire world pays the price. This is where wisdom comes in, Scott. My point is this. There is a time to be Scott, and there's a time to be Marshall, and a wise person knows when to be which of us, right? There's a time when you are dead on right, when you, Scott Garcia, need to take that principled stance and die on the hill of liberty, the data be damned. But there are also times when, look, if you don't pay attention to the data and you're going to stand on some principle, let's say it's your patriotism or they launched a nuke at us, whatever, well, then we're all lost. So wisdom comes down to being able to say, you know what, I'm going to discern with my wisdom, my philosophy, if you will, to be more like Scott or to perhaps be more like Marshall, to be more driven by my gut or to be more driven by the data. To say that there is one correct approach all the time, I think is wrong. So there are times when I have to lay aside my opinion on the data and go with my gut. But there are also going to be times when I think you, Scott, are going to have to put your emotions aside and say, you know what, I'm going to trust in the data here. So,
and so how do we gain that wisdom? We're going to close out the show with this. How do you gain that wisdom? The Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So I'm going to throw that out there and say that to put that out there. You want to be wise? Sure. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So, Mark, go ahead.
I think that's a good start, but I do think you need to delve into philosophy and learn how moral decisions are made and kind of learn about yourself and how do you think. You have to learn how to think. You have to learn how to recognize logical fallacies. The unexamined life is not worth living. That's Socrates. And I think that is how you're going to actually get into that wisdom. But I don't want to dissuade people from following the path that you encourage them to take either. There's wisdom there as well that is ready for the taking.
All right. Well, this has been United Opposition. We'll be Tuesdays at 4:00 right here on 511 Media. And Marshall, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you guys later.